Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving into something really exciting, the future of the classroom. Specifically, we're going to unpack how to design truly meaningful e-learning experiences. If you're an educator, an administrator, or just someone passionate about modern teaching, you're in the right place. We've got some fantastic source material to cover, so let's jump right in. Think about this for a second. Are our schools just becoming testing factories? It's a pretty provocative question, right? Educational scholar David Jonasson hit the nail on the head when he observed that schools, literally from kindergarten all the way through high school, have become obsessively focused on just taking tests. And the real problem here? These tests usually measure skills that are completely detached from a student's actual everyday life. Memorizing facts just to pass a test doesn't equal meaningful learning. It basically just creates an assembly line. So today we're going to explore exactly how we can break that mold. To escape that testing factory mentality, we're turning to e-learning. Now, technically speaking, this is the use of internet technologies to deliver solutions that enhance knowledge and performance anytime and anywhere. But I want to be super clear right out of the gate. E-learning is absolutely not some cold, robotic replacement for human teachers. No way. Instead, think of it as this massive, dynamic toolkit designed to completely elevate how you teach. It's about leveraging technology to open up a much broader, richer view of learning. So, what's actually in it for you and your students? Well, the perks are pretty incredible. First off, it allows for self-paced learning. Students can totally skip over what they already know and zero in on what they're actually struggling with. Just imagine a student being able to literally pause and rewind a really complex algebra explanation until it finally clicks. You just can't do that in a crowded 40-person classroom. It also guarantees a consistent delivery of content and lets you update your materials in a snap. Plus, it massively boosts participation. You know those students who are way too shy to raise their hand in class? They often totally thrive in online discussion forums. At the end of the day, it encourages independent learning, which builds that crucial self-knowledge and confidence. Now, a lot of people think integrating technology is an all-or-nothing switch, but it's actually not. It exists on a continuum. Bringing digital tools into your curriculum doesn't mean you have to pack up your physical classroom and never see your students face-to-face again. It's more like a dial. You can tune the degree of digital blending to perfectly match your school's needs and your own personal teaching style. To really get a feel for that dial, let's look at the two extreme ends of the spectrum. On one side, you have conventional teaching. This is your classic face-to-face instructor-centered approach. It's very instructivist, meaning the teacher is running the show and learners are mostly passive recipients, just soaking up information. Then, on the complete opposite end, you have fully online distance learning. Here, everything is web-based, there is zero face-to-face interaction, and the student is basically left to study on their own, maybe chatting in a forum here and there. And that brings us to the absolute sweet spot for most modern classrooms, blended learning. This is the ultimate middle ground. Imagine a setup where maybe 70% of the class is face-to-face and 30% is online. By putting your core lecture content online for students to absorb on their own time, you drastically cut down on the time you spend just standing and talking. That frees you up to shift your whole vibe from a lecturer at the front of the room to a facilitator, a guide on the side, if you will. You get to actually meet with learners to tackle high-level problem solving instead of just reciting basic facts. But, and this is a really big but, there is a trap here. E-learning is not just transplanting your physical classroom into a virtual space. Educational expert Diana Laurielard makes a brilliant point about this. True e-learning requires a massive shift in your actual teaching mindset. You can't just take a standard 45-minute lecture, film it, dump the video online and say, great, I'm doing e-learning. The digital world is fundamentally different. It disrupts traditional teaching, which means we have to seize this opportunity to design entirely new, innovative ways for students to learn. So let's take a look under the hood at the engine making all of this work. This is the e-learning pedagogical framework. It's rooted in cognitive constructivist theories, and it essentially maps out how three core pillars, technology, content, and learning activities all interact to get the amazing results we're aiming for. Here's how you actually build this out in practice. It's a three-step process. Step one is technology design. This is where you pick your tools, maybe a platform like Moodle, and decide if you're going to use wikis, quizzes, or forums. Step two is content design. And this isn't just picking the textbook chapters. It's about really profiling who your learners are, making sure the material flows logically, and ensuring the whole thing is actually user-friendly. Finally, step three is learning design. This is where the magic happens. It's the art of crafting specific activities like a virtual debate or an online simulation that force the learner to interact with the content, with their classmates, and with you. Now let's pivot for a second. We've talked about the how, but what about the why? What's the actual point of doing all this? Because whatever tech you use, the most critical question is, does this actually improve learning? This framework promises that if you successfully blend your tech, your content, and your learning design, you are going to hit the ultimate goal, meaningful learning outcomes. Let's be real. Teachers are only going to adopt this stuff if they see it actually helps their students understand concepts better, remember them longer, and solve problems faster. And that's exactly what this visual captures. This is Jonathan's meaningful learning cycle, and it perfectly illustrates what meaningful actually looks like. It shows us how a digital environment sparks high-order thinking. We aren't just moving in a straight line memorizing things anymore. Learning becomes this rich, continuous, interconnected cycle. Jonathan breaks this down into 5 essential traits. First up, learning has to be intentional, meaning it's driven by a clear goal. Second, it needs to be active. Students should be manipulating their environment and watching what happens. Third, it has to be constructive, where learners take those new experiences and hook them onto things they already know. Actually, active and constructive traits completely rely on each other to make things click. Fourth, it must be authentic. We've got to ditch those canned, artificial textbook problems and anchor our lessons in the real world. And finally, learning needs to be collaborative. Students should be working together as a real community. Let's actually pause on that collaborative piece for a second because it points out a hilarious and kind of sad irony in traditional schooling. We generally run schools on the assumption that learning is this solo, isolated journey. In fact, if students collaborate without our explicit permission, we usually call it cheating. But out in the real world, humans build knowledge in teams. We solve big problems together. E-learning platforms, with their shared documents, discussion boards, and video chats, fix this disconnect by making collaboration a core feature of the classroom, rather than a punishable offense. When we take Jonathan's ideas and mix them with Benjamin Bloom's famous taxonomy, updated for the digital age, of course, we get this incredibly empowering checklist for modern students. Sure, we start with the basics, remembering and understanding. We move up through analyzing and applying. But the real 21st century magic happens at the very top of the list. Critical evaluation, creating brand new knowledge, and cooperating with others. Today, collaboration isn't just a nice-to-have soft skill, it is an absolute requirement. Honestly, this whole concept is summed up perfectly by researchers Dror, Schmidt, and O'Connor. They wrote, "It is not what you teach. The focus must be on what the students learn, what knowledge and skills the learners acquire, what they will remember in the long term and apply to their practice." It's a pretty humbling thought, isn't it? But it's also deeply inspiring, because e-learning is not about showing off the flashiest new app. It's about truly partnering with our students on their long-term intellectual journey. So, as we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final question to ponder. Are you providing sufficient opportunities for students to be genuinely creative in your classroom, or are they mostly just gearing up for the next exam? The e-learning frameworks we've explored today offer a real, practical blueprint to move away from passive lectures and step into a world of active, meaningful, and highly collaborative learning. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope it's given you some exciting new perspectives to bring back to your own teaching practice.